right, so we'll make it simple. Imagine there's 4 zones. You're cut in half vertically and you're cut in half horizontally. Okay. Your sword is usually going to be covering one of these zones, right? Whether it's high or low, left or right. And your dagger is, or your hand is usually going to be covering another zone, right? It could be covering here, it could be covering here, it could be covering here. One of the zones is usually too far back to attack, and it's usually the rear leg. So if my sword is covering one zone, the lower right zone, my dagger is covering another zone, the upper left zone, my lower left zone is too far away for you to attack. This only leaves one zone for you to attack. Now, this is true when I'm attacking and when I'm defending. So, when I bring my dagger down to capture your sword, and I bring my sword high to attack you like this, this really only leaves 2 zones that you could hit. My lower right zone, which you would have to travel through my weapon to hit, or through my hand, or my upper left zone, which is going to be your closer zone, the easier one to hit. So simply, after I attack you, I know that you're probably going to go to my open zone. So when you disengage and go to the open zone, I just preemptively bring my sword there to parry your attack before it gets there, because I know that's where you're going to go because it's the only open zone. So when I bring my arm down and my sword up, you're going there, I'm going to preemptively bring my sword there and get this parry preemptive, because I know you're going to go there. Then I just repost. So it's really simple. If they only have 4 zones, whichever zone you're open in, or if I only have 4 zones, whichever zone I'm open in is usually going to be where they always attack. So I usually just move one of my weapons to that zone right after I attack, or to their weapon. So what I could also do is, like, if I'm going here and I'm fencing out and going to your weapon, then my sword is also going here, which is covering that open zone, and then I'm like hitting your sword and I'm retreating. So fencing's really simple. They're almost always going to attack in your open zone, because if they attack in your closed zone, then they're just going to get parried. And you usually only have like 1 open zone. Technically, you kind of have like 2, which is why we split it into 5 zones, where that center zone, that thin center zone down the center. But for the ease of use, it's realistically kind of more like 4 zones to simplify it. The opponent's always going to attack into that open zone. Now, where it gets more complex is like, if I know that, so say you're in this guard, if I know that you have 1 open zone, and you know I'm going to attack that open zone because I'm not going to attack into a closed zone. So I know that when I attack into this open zone, that you're going to go and you're going to move one of your weapons to parry. And for now, we'll say it's your sword, okay? So I know that when I attack you, you're going to parry the zone. Based on how you're standing tells me which style you do, which tells me which weapon you're probably going to parry that zone with. So then I don't have to guess which weapon is he going to parry the zone with. I know that because of how you're standing, or because of the side I'm on, if I'm on your sword side and I attack that zone, then you're probably going to raise your sword up to parry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attack that zone so that you bring your weapon up to parry it, and then I'm going to go to a different zone. And that's very simple level 1 feigning. I attack the opening, and then I need to know which weapon's going to move there, because that's going to dictate the opening. So I attack here, you bring it there, then I'm going to go somewhere else. Now in this case, after I feint that zone, I would just attack also in a place that your other weapon can't reach to protect you. So if you're in that guard, I know also that that leg you're going to have a hard time reaching to protect with your dagger. So when I go here and you feint with your sword, and then I go to this cut, you're going to have a hard time reaching it. So now we'll say you're here like this, and you're the type of person that cross parries a lot with your dagger. Then I know that based on your stance, so I'm going to throw to this open zone, so you go to cross parry with your dagger. Now I know that if you're smart, when I go to the next zone, you'll go to parry with your sword. So say I were to go under your dagger, and you bring your sword across to parry. Like that, okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get your first item to parry, and then I'm going to get your second item to parry and move, and then I'm just going to attack where it came from, because your other weapon can't get there in time. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So when I'm looking at someone and I see they have an opening, I'm going to attack that opening so they parry one of their weapons there. I'm going to redirect to another opening, which is a lot of times the opening that that weapon just left from. If they're skilled, they'll get their other weapon there. So I've attacked here, you cross parry. And then I'm going to attack where your cross parry came from, and you're going to do an inside parry with your sword. And I know that, so I know that first zone is going to be cross parry, second zone is going to be sword because it's the only logical thing, not movement. So now I would actually attack where the sword ended up coming from. Because now your dagger is in movement and your sword is in movement. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So you look at someone, you see where they're open, you rarely try to actually hit that opening, you just feint it. And then you either attack where their weapon came from, or where they're open, or where they can't reach. So, and then the levels of difficulty go from there. Like, the better someone is, you're going to have to feint both their weapons. If someone's skilled, then they'll know this is in tempo, so they'll go to parry with their sword, right? Which then can also cross them up. So, otherwise, other people that aren't as aware of their tempo, they'll try to bring their dagger back in time, and they have to stop the movement and stop the momentum, and then try and get it back the other way, which they usually can't do in time. Mm-hmm. So when I'm doing this certain attack and I'm going here, boom, all I'm doing is preemptively going where you're about to be, which you kept disengaging to the outside, and I would just move my sword here and beat it, and then attack you again. And you just rinse and repeat because you know they're just going to move back to the opening. Mm-hmm. So that was what was happening. So like a lot of times, instead of like waiting for you to attack and get the parry, you're just preemptively parrying the opening when the opponent moves. Okay. So like if I'm here and I see you're already beginning to lunge and I can tell you're going high, then when you start that lunge, I'm already starting my parry. Which is how you can just, it seems like people are parrying super quick and they're like, well, how do they have such a fast reaction time? But it's because I'm not waiting for your like sword to be fully extended to get the parry. So I'm not waiting for a specific hand telegraph. I'm just looking for your body to move. Now, like a lot of people can be like, well, I like to wait the last minute to parry, and because then they overcommit and blah, 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 which like, if you can do that, that's fine, but the issue is the longer you wait to parry, the more of a chance they have to trick you, and the less time you have. So, for example, if you attack me, and I'm like, I'm going to wait till this last second to parry, then what's going to happen is all this distance you went, you could have tricked me and gone somewhere else, right? And then now if I go to wait this last second to parry, and then you go somewhere else, then I'm going to end up missing, and you're going to hit somewhere else. So like I prefer to shut their weapon down usually like as soon as possible. So like say you go to attack me right here, like I want to shut it down as quick as I can. I want to gain control as quick as I can, especially because then you're moving forward and you're closer. I'm going to have an easier repost by shutting it down a bit sooner. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it can be done either way, like not necessarily either of them is like the correct way. You really want to be able to do all of them, but